Congestion pricing, New York City. Tips, exemptions, and discounts. I did my research, but of course I cannot guarantee everything said, and things change. Consult the official websites for the latest information. What is congestion pricing? It is a fee charged to drivers for entering a heavy traffic zone. It is to encourage some to use mass transit instead, with funds used to improve public transportation projects. Cities that have it have reported decrease in traffic, making it easier for those who actually do drive. Price differs based on the time of day or if there is a gridlock alert day. And yes, the MTA gets these funds up front in the form of a loan, in the form of a bond, so they can make these projects happen through the upcoming years. It's also been implemented in some other cities: London, Singapore, Stockholm, Milan, and Gothenburg. Congestion pricing is the law. In March 2019, the New York State Legislature and Governor Cuomo signed on. On the federal level, this is backed up by the Intermodal Surface Transportation Efficiency Act, ISTEA, of 1991. The Moving Ahead for Progress in the 21st Century, MAP 21. The Federal Highway Administration's Value Pricing Pilot Process. There have been various lawsuits dismissed or settled. The MTA Board, as recently as November 2024, has approved of this plan. And so that federal approval has happened already. So Donald Trump, he has mentioned getting rid of the program. Whether that will happen, well, one, I don't think he cares enough to try to make that happen. But part of why the program is being implemented now is to try to avoid that possibility from happening. But the Supreme Court that Trump put 3 of the people on there. This court is very pro states' rights. They're letting the states do whatever they want, pretty much. And so for them to turn around and then say, well, New York can't charge $9 for people to drive into their city, that would be quite ridiculous. Now, yes, you could say that he can try to revoke the federal approval, but I think the judge can see, why is there a federal approval process if there's no way that anybody could actually be approved? So I think just like all the other judges, some of which are federal judges, have seen right through any argument against this. The Supreme Court would see it just the same way, or more likely a federal court would say that this is the law, and the Supreme Court just say, no, we're not going to hear the case again because this is the law in New York. And so then what we're going to have to see at this point is there's 14 other states that signed up for that value pricing pilot process, and states are still allowed to sign up, but there's no money to help them implement the program or to research the program. So the only thing that these other 14 states are going to be able to do is see how it goes in New York. And so there's also that. It's important to be politically engaged. When this was being passed in 2019, there was some upset, but pretty minimal. And so some of the goals of congestion pricing, I'll go through some of the goals and some of the concerns. Some of the main goals are to reduce traffic and pollution, to fund capital public transportation improvements, construction like elevators, train automation, that sort of thing. Now some of the concerns. This is increased cost to drivers, and so products and services that might go up. But I think if you have a whole truck of goods, I think that's going to have less of an impact than perhaps individuals trying to just bring a few products in. But all of those are valid concerns. There's also the concern that some people will just decide not to come to Manhattan or not to come to New York City. there's the concern that traffic could worsen in the areas outside of, of the zone. And so all of these things are important to keep on top of if you're a voter, especially because you're the ones that decide, the voters in New York State. But then my question to voters in other states are, do you think that your city should adopt a congestion pricing plan? In terms of your budget, this is basically a toll. And so the technology used is a little bit different. Because the traffic flow is different, they are matching the cameras and the license plates to the Easy Pass. However, all of the prices that you hear quoted about this is based on having an Easy Pass account tied in and having Easy Pass tag on the car. If that Easy Pass is not on the tag of the car, if it doesn't line up with anything, then there's the toll by mail program, which has additional fees. If you have to go somewhere that's outside of the zone, but you have to go through the zone and you can't get to an exempted roadway, well then you still have to pay. We already have a world-class 24/7 transportation system as an alternative, and for the late night period, there's a 75% discount. So, what is the MTA going to be doing with this money? These are for what's called capital expenses, which is different from operating expenses. Operating expenses are paying employees, paying the power bill, things like that. Capital are basically assets, so improving the stations themselves, the elevators themselves, getting the new rail cars, things like that. A lot of this is going to go into accessibility improvements. So that's going to be more elevators and ramps, things like that. Modern signals that allow more trains per hour, because we still use a block-based system for most of the trains in New York City. But when you use communication-based, you can get the train a lot closer because we know where the train is, so they can drive closer and safer. They're getting new electric buses. The Second Avenue subway, the phase 2 is going to be able to happen. That'll bring it to 125th Street, and state of good repair capital expenses as well. So we're looking at more than 20 stations getting those accessibility improvements. We're looking at the AC train into Brooklyn. We're looking at the BDFM line, which is Manhattan 6th Avenue, so pretty much right down the middle. And so, like I said, these are capital expenses. The fares go towards operating expenses. Operating expenses are things like paying the drivers, keeping the gas, the power bill, all of those sorts of things. It is really expensive to run a public transportation system. You can't just lower executive salaries to the point where nobody would take those jobs, and then hope that you can run things and make the balanced budget. And that's why there is also the state and federal subsidy. Because transportation is already used by low to moderate income riders, where $3 is already a lot of money. So you can't just go to like $8, which is closer to what you would need in order to not need any federal or state money. And like I said, that would be just to keep the current state running. So for the people that are not so familiar with New York City layout, here's some of the major attractions that you've probably heard of that are right inside of the zone where this toll would be. And so Times Square, the United Nations, the World Trade Center, Wall Street, New York University, and when you go on the ferry to get to the Statue of Liberty, Ellis Island. You can go to mta.info/maps, so that's mta.info/maps, And as you can see shown on the side of the screen is currently what it looks like. On the top of the page is where the zone is all the way through to the bottom. You can see all of those options there. Some places in Manhattan that you may have heard of that are outside of the zone. So that is north of 60th Street. Museum Mile, so that's where the Met is, that's where the Guggenheim is. That's outside of this zone. Columbia University in Harlem, Central Park, most of that, almost all of that, that's outside of the zone. They're defining the only zone is the Central Business District, which they are defining as 60th Street and below. And so all of the outer boroughs are outside of that as well. So that's Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx, Staten Island. Staten Island, there is a different bridge that has a toll on that. As you can see outside of the zone, there's also a lot of options. And so Central Park is that green space that you see on the Manhattan Island, so on the island to the left. So Museum Mile is going to be pretty much right on one side of that. Columbia University is a little bit north of that. Harlem then a little bit north further. And then on the top there you see the Bronx, you see part of Queens. You can see Brooklyn as well as more of the southern parts of Queens as well. In terms of your transportation hubs, inside the zone, so that's Penn Station, Grand Central, Port Authority Bus Terminal, Fulton Street Transit Center, the ferries to go to Statue of Liberty, Staten Island, New Jersey, the Rockaways, all of there. Outside of the zone, you also do have some ferries. All of the airports are outside of the zone. So that's LaGuardia, JFK, and Newark. Newark Airport is in New Jersey. So there are extra costs to take the train from New Jersey to New York, just so you know if you're booking your options. They also don't have the 24-hour public transportation. In the late night, there is a bus from Newark. I believe it's the 62 bus. But I'm not sure if that runs a full 24 hours or if it runs like 22 hours maybe. Also, the George Washington Bridge that has a bus terminal on it as well. Congestion pricing is going to be implemented in stages. And so from 2025 until 2027, those 3 years, for passenger cars, it's going to be $9. And so the peak period, that's 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. on weekdays and 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. on weekends. So like I said, 2025 through 2027 is $9. Then from 2028 through 2030 is $12. And then the price, it's $15 is the full thing that's going to be in 2031. And the overnight period, so that's 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. on weekdays and 9 p.m. to 9 a.m. on weekends, is when you get that 75% off. And you'd get charged if you're a car once a day, the first time that you enter in the day. And calendar days are 12 midnight through 11:59 p.m. For the truckers, there is difference if it's single unit axle or multi. I'm not sure what the difference is between those. I'm sorry if you're a trucker. Hopefully you'll know. For the single unit, during the 2025 to 2027, it's $14.40. In the 2028 through 2030, $19.20. And then from 2031 on, $24. That there is the 75% off overnight period discount. However, this fee is charged per entry. And then for the multi-unit, $21.60 for these first 3 years. Then it goes to $28.80, and then it'll go to $36. Buses that serve as an alternative to driving into the city, and so that would be both regional buses that bring people from the suburbs to the city, and inner city buses, so like Greyhound, Megabus, things like that bring people from other cities to New York City, but doing it in a way so that they don't have to drive in. Those are exempted. However, buses that are for a private purpose where there's no public ability to use, so like a tour bus or a charter bus, they're paying the same as the single unit trucks. Alright, motorcycles. You're going to start at $4.50. That's going to be through 2027. Then your next phase-in is going to be $6. And then the full thing will be $7.50. Taxis and rideshare companies, Uber, Lyft, things like that, the fees are going to be based per trip. And so the yellow taxis, those are the iconic New York City taxis that are subject to the medallion caps. There's only a certain amount of yellow taxis that are allowed to exist, and the value of those medallions plummeted when Uber and Lyft took to the scene. And so the city is treating the yellow taxis a little bit better these days. There's also the green taxi system, because the yellow taxis were focusing on Manhattan and the airports. So then the green taxis, they're getting the same treatment as the yellow taxis for this purpose. The green taxis were limited, where they weren't allowed to serve on the core of Manhattan in terms of pickups. So the fees for the yellow and green taxi is going to be 75 cents. And then the ride shares, those are Uber, Lyft, companies like that. The congestion pricing fee is going to be $1.50. Now there is already a fee called congestion for the taxis. That there's a fee when you look on the website that says congestion. That's a different fee. That fee is already in effect. So this is a new fee. Fee on fee, I guess. Remember, to get the best rate, you have to use EasyPass. And also for the people coming off of crossings that already have a fee, so that would be the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel, which has a different name these days, the Holland Tunnel and Lincoln Tunnel, they get a bit of a credit. Here are exemptions and discounts that some people qualify for. Alright, here's the 6 of them. 1. The low income discount plan. 2. The individual disability exemption plan. 3. The organizational disability exemption plan. 4. The emergency vehicles exemption plan. 5. The commuter bus exemption plan, which I already explained. And 6. The specialized government vehicle exemption plan. Then there's some tax considerations as well for those that live inside of the zone. The low income discount plan. After 10 calendar days per month entering the zone, additional days is 50% off. Now remember that there's only one payment per day. And up to 4 cars can be used on this one account for this program. They are low-income folks that live within the zone. It's a misconception that only if you're rich can you live inside of Manhattan, or anywhere in New York City. If you've watched some of my other videos, you're probably aware of that. Section 8 being one way that lower income folks live within the zone. Another one being there are some NYCHA campuses within the zone. There's also rent control, rent stabilization that has helped keep rents low within the zone. Okay, so for residents of the zone that make under 60K. New York State is also having a credit. So if you go on the tax.ny.gov, as you can see, for the Central Business District toll credit. Out of all of the groups that were politically involved, the individuals politically involved on the issue, the only ones that got an exemption was the disability community. It makes sense. The program is to encourage the use of mass transit. So for those who have no way of being able to use public transportation, they shouldn't be penalized. There's a lot of important medical facilities within the zone. Of course, friends, entertainment, many jobs, of course, are also in the zone, and we want people to be able to go to those without being impeded by this cost. And so how it works is it has to be a disability that prevents from the use of public transportation. That can be physical or mental. Age is not a factor. If you qualify for Accessoride or go to the office and get certified, or there's certain park permits that can be used to certify, then you can designate one vehicle. So either the one that the disabled person uses themselves, or let's say there's a friend or family member or caregiver, the vehicle that they would use, would then you attach the certification to that. Emergency vehicles and also government vehicles performing a specific task can also get the exemption. They made it clear that it's not for employees just shuttling around employees when it's part of their job. I'm not quite sure how that's going to work out. I think what they're saying is that, like, someone working for ACS, let's say, for an example, or some other department that has to go between places. But then there's also the police, and we know that the police just turn on their siren whenever they feel like it. So I don't know how that's going to go, but it's on the list. For more information and to apply, go to the official MTA website. And so that's going to be mta.info/tolls/congestion, the word, and then dash relief, and then the dash /zone/ Google will help. For businesses, for 1099 gig workers, anything like that, remember, as always, to document the purpose of your trip, and then check the IRS website and New York State website to determine how this deduction will be used. And so, there's going to be guidance. This doesn't start until 2025, so in 2026 is when you're going to be filling out the taxes, where this first would be on there. Official information at congestionreliefzone.mta.info. Thanks for listening.